Are you considering moving into the neighborhood of Bayridge? Well, you likely want to know the pros and the cons associated with living in Bayridge if you are. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing some of the cons associated with living in Bayridge. So if you'd like to learn more, stay tuned. Hey there, my name is Chichi Aguoji. I'm a New York-based realtor with a focus on helping seniors and retirees sell their homes and find the best locations to retire. In this video, I'll be discussing some of the downsides associated with living in the neighborhood of Bayridge. So without further ado, let's get into it. Con number one, cost of living. The cost of living in Bayridge is not only high, but it's increasing. And this is due most likely to the higher housing prices and the higher rental amount that you'll be incurring if you were to decide to relocate to Bayridge. The standard one-bedroom apartment might cost anywhere from $200 to $250 more if you were to rent it in the neighborhood of Bayridge. And so you're really going to be paying a premium to live in the neighborhood if you decide to move there. In fact, Area Vibes reports that the cost of living in Bayridge is one of the highest in all of the 5 boroughs. And we know this is true because when we look at the average cost of living across all the 5 boroughs relative to the national average for cost of living, we see that the average cost of living in the 5 boroughs is only 60% higher than that of the national average. However, when we look at the average cost of living for Bayridge alone, we see that it's 75% higher than the national average. So while living in Bayridge does come with a lot of perks, just note that things will likely be more expensive in the neighborhood relative to other areas in the 5 boroughs. Con number 2, limited parking. Now, like most areas in Brooklyn, parking can be much of a luxury, but this is especially true in Bayridge. Now, parking in Bayridge is especially difficult for 2 main reasons. The first has to do with the fact that most of the homes in Bayridge are not built with garages or driveways that would allow the homeowners to actually park their vehicles by their residence. The second reason has to do with the fact that there are a lot of older residents in Bayridge who prefer to get around using their very own vehicle. And so whatever parking spots are available in the neighborhood of Bayridge tend to be taken up by these cars that belong to the older residents. Now, to drive the point home about how difficult parking can be in Bayridge, there was a recent study conducted by Localize.city that found that the residents of Bayridge and Bath Beach tied first place with East Elmhurst, Queens, for the most number of complaints from residents around limited parking in their neighborhood. So if you are considering moving to Bayridge and you own a car, you might also want to consider leaving the car behind when you move. Con number 3, surface level diversity. Well, what do I mean by surface level diversity? Well, let me explain. So Bayridge is very much like the city of New York in that you can consider it to be a melting pot on paper. And by that I mean, if you take a macro level view and you look at the percentages of demographics and how they're broken out for New York City or for, Bayridge as a neighborhood, you'll see that, wow, it's really spread out in terms of the differences of the types of people that choose to call this neighborhood home. But what happens when you dig a little deeper and you move from the macro level view and you go to a micro level view and you really kick the tires a little bit, what you might discover is that things don't always appear as they seem. It really goes back to your own individual personal definition of diversity, because if you define diversity as having access to people who are different from you, then Bayridge is incredibly diverse. But if you define diversity as actually engaging with and actually interacting with people who are different from you, then Bayridge may not consider to be diverse. So when you do hear about people discussing how diverse Bayridge is, I think it's important that you have to take that with a grain of salt, because while you will have access to people who are of different religions than you, different age brackets than you, different ethnicities from you, or different political affiliations from you, whether or not you actually take the initiative to engage with these types of people who are different from yourself is really up to you, right? It's really up to the individual. So again, it goes back to your definition of diversity. If you simply define diversity as having access, then this may not be a con. But if you define diversity as really taking the initiative and ultimately being able to be in a room with people who are very different from yourself, to engage with them, to learn from them, then Bay Ridge may not be as diverse as you think. Hey there, if you're enjoying the video so far, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and let's keep going. Con number 4, proximity to Staten Island and New Jersey. Bay Ridge's proximity to Staten Island and the state of New Jersey makes it a top weekend destination for Staten Islanders as well as New Jerseyans. So as a resident of Bay Ridge, this is a con because what could happen is it could lead to overcrowding of some of your most frequented, loved cafes, restaurants that you want to go to on the weekend. So Staten Islanders as well as folks from New Jersey not only enjoy coming to Bay Ridge because it's so close, but also because they literally equate it to coming and making a trip to the city. So just something to keep in mind, that the small town feel that Bay Ridge offers might be put into question on your weekends as you see more of an influx of people coming in from Staten Island and New Jersey. Con number 5, the R train. Now, while the city does provide many above ground transportation options if you want to get both into and out of Bay Ridge, you know, we talked about the ferries and the express buses when I did my video about the pros of living in Bay Ridge. If you want to actually travel out of and into Bay Ridge using an underground method, there is only one route for you. And that route is the very, very, very slow R train. Ask any resident of Bay Ridge and they will tell you that the R train is likely the worst part of having to commute both into and out of Bay Ridge. Commute times into the city, if you're taking the R train, can take anywhere from 45 minutes on an amazing, glorious, good day to 2 hours if there's any form of delay on the R line. And the MTA is aware of this problem because the R train doesn't have the best record when it comes to delays. So the MTA recently conducted a survey where they wanted to assess the amount of its ridership, or the number of its ridership that were happy with each of its subway lines. The R train had the 3rd lowest satisfaction across all the subway lines in the city at 43%. So there were 43% of respondents to the survey that really were happy with the R train and the service that it provided. However, it also means that there were 57% of respondents to the survey that were incredibly unhappy and not satisfied with the level of service that's provided by the R train. So again, just something else to keep in mind, there's only one form of underground transportation both into and out of Bay Ridge, and it's incredibly slow and delay ridden. All right, that's it for this video summarizing the cons of living in Bay Ridge. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one.